Chapter 1, Divided by Love and War. Once upon a time, in a land far away, there was a small town with very few people. Everyone knew each other, and they all lived in harmony and peace. On the outskirts of this small town, a beautiful house stood. This house was built of stone and wood, and it belonged to a lady who everyone in the city called Lady May. Not only was Lady May popular, but she was also kind and gentle with a love for nature. Her garden was filled with exotic plants and trees that bloomed and blossomed. Her house appeared quite common, but her garden's beauty was incomparable. Many people in town passed by her house on their way to their farms to admire the beauty of Lady May's garden. The trees formed a canopy over her garden and her house with their thick branches. It offered a resting place for those entering the town after being beaten by the hot summer sun. When the leaves from the trees fell, a soft blanket formed on the ground, and when the sun rose in the morning, it seemed as if her garden was clothed in nothing but a layer of gold. Such was the beauty of the garden of Lady May, but there was more than that. Several bluebirds lived in her garden, and there were also many rabbits. Here, they lived in peace and were not disturbed by raccoons and skunks, for Lady May had put a fence around her garden to prevent the wild animals from coming in. The rabbits multiplied and were divided mainly into two groups based on their breed. One group had shiny white coats, upright ears, and an eye-band color right around their eyes. The eye-band around their eyes were the differentiating factor between this group and the other. Some rabbits' bands were black while others were dark chocolate. They were Dwarf Hotot rabbits, and they lived together alongside their neighbors, who were different from them in appearance. Their neighbors were various colors. A few of them had white fur, and they would have been mistaken for the Dwarf Hotot rabbits if not for their ears. Their ears were lopped and almond-shaped. The Dwarf Hotot's neighbor was the Holland rabbit. Even though the two were different in their physical characteristics, they lived beside each other in their separate kingdoms. They were all loved by Lady May, who often played with them in the cool of the evening. Both kingdoms thrived alongside one another, helping when the need arose, living peacefully in their own part of the garden. The peace between both kingdoms was exemplary, and the other animals who often came to visit the garden during the day acknowledged the two kingdoms, surprised that they lived in peace. Each kingdom had a king of their own, and both kings often visited each other. The Holland rabbits were ruled by a king who was strong and powerful. All his subjects held him in high regard, as he was from noble descent, having the blood of 4 royal generations flowing through his veins. His appearance was striking as he was a mighty blue-tort Holland rabbit with soft fur. He had penetrating dark brown eyes, and he appeared muscular, towering over his subjects. His family had been participating in the rabbit show for the past 4 generations, which made them superior to any other rabbits in Lady May's garden and the entire region. As a result of this, the king of the Holland Lop rabbit, who went by the name Oliver, became proud. King Oliver also had many toys in his collection, and his toys were so unique that many creatures who visited the garden were captivated by them. The king of the Dwarf Hotot rabbits was a sharp contrast to King Oliver of the Holland Lop rabbits. His name was King Jack. He was a young king and easygoing. His core belief was that every rabbit in his clan was equal, and even though he was the king, he never wielded his power over his subjects. He was gentle in nature as well as caring, and he often came close to Lady May, who loved stroking him. Whenever Lady May was around, King Jack had 1 or 2 tricks to show her, which made her laugh. There was no doubt that King Jack was one of the rabbits that Lady May adored, and she often gave King Jack and his friends carrot tops and other goodies to enjoy. The same couldn't be said of King Oliver, whom Lady May had to coax most of the time before he would get close to her. Still, she adored him as much as she loved King Jack and often gave him goodies too. For many generations, both the Holland Lop and Dwarf Hotot rabbits lived peacefully in the gardens and didn't interfere in each other's business. This had been the way it was done from the time both rabbits had begun to cohabit in the garden, and King Oliver and King Jack continued this tradition. Being close friends, they often paid visits to each other since, encouraging the relationship between both kingdoms. All this would change one fateful day, because of a single lady rabbit. Not just a single rabbit, but the prettiest lady rabbit in all the Dwarf Hotot kingdom. Both King Oliver and King Jack fell in love with her, though their loves were not the same. It was King Oliver's turn to pay a visit to King Jack's palace. This is where the fateful encounter with Nyla happened. King Jack was having his great hall repainted, and he had commissioned it to one of the painters in his kingdom. "I can see that you are in the process of repainting your great hall," King Oliver said to King Jack as they hopped alongside each other. "Yes, I finally decided to have it painted. It hasn't been painted since my parents' time." King Jack's servants passed by them, and King Jack greeted them while King Oliver ignored them. They both headed towards the Great Hall to see how the painting was going. There, they both met Nyla, who was busy painting the hall. She had her back turned towards them and wasn't aware that both kings had entered. "Who is that?" King Oliver asked King Jack. "I have no idea," King Jack managed to reply. Both kings were taken in by Nyla's beautiful back, but she was still working on the walls, deep in concentration and barely conscious of her surroundings. The kings hopped over to where Nyla was working in the corner. They reached where she was, and King Jack was the first one to speak. "It is a great pleasure to have you in my palace, my lady. I hope that your work will be exquisite." Jack stepped closer to her. His voice broke Nyla's concentration, and she realized that King Jack and King Oliver were standing beside her. Though she hadn't met King Oliver before, she knew that the rabbit standing beside King Jack could be none other than the king of the Holland rabbits. "Thank you, Your Grace. I promise to work efficiently and effectively." Nyla turned her face and replied sweetly to the young king. "I can't believe that she is a rabbit in my kingdom," King Jack thought to himself. King Jack tried his best to get to know everyone in his kingdom, but there were far more than he could ever know personally. He was astonished that there was someone as beautiful as Nyla in his kingdom, whom he had never met her before. In that moment, Nyla stole his heart, though she was barely aware of his presence. "He is so handsome," she thought to herself as she saw the king bowed his head in gratitude towards her. There was no one in the kingdom who wasn't aware of how humble and friendly King Jack was. Still, Nyla was taken back to see King Jack bow to her. A king had no reason to bow to his subject, especially when she was only doing her duty. The feeling running through King Jack was the same as the one King Oliver was feeling. King Oliver was thinking about how making Nyla his own would add more elegance and beauty to his precious possessions. King Oliver had always boasted that he had the most beautiful possessions. Having seen Nyla, he decided it was essential to have her as part of his collection. He would show her off as his queen since no one could match her beauty in the Dwarf Hotot and Holland kingdom. With her as his queen, he would be able to boast that his precious possessions were indeed unmatched by any other rabbit in the kingdom. When other rabbits and creatures made their way to his palace to look at his prized possession, they would also lay their eyes upon Nyla. "Meet my dear friend," King Jack said as he introduced King Oliver. "King Oliver of the Holland Loch. It is a pleasure to be graced by your beauty," King Oliver said. Nyla smiled and nodded when King Oliver inquired as to whether she had always lived in the kingdom. King Oliver watched King Jack and Nyla talking, offering no conversation of his own. He simply stood transfixed until he and King Jack left, leaving Nyla to finish her work. Watching her chat with Jack, Oliver noticed that Nyla seemed to be a friendly rabbit, which only increased his desire to have her. "I'm going to have her for my own," King Oliver said as he made his way back to his kingdom. As for King Jack, he was inquisitive as to what type of rabbit Nyla was. He called one of his trusted ministers and asked him if he knew about Nyla. "The one is painting the Great Hall?" the minister asked. "Yes. Do you know anything about her?" King Jack asked with excitement. Of course, Your Majesty. There is no one who doesn't. That came as a surprise to King Jack, who asked for more information about Nyla. He was told that she was the daughter of one of the painters in the Dwarf Hotot kingdom. She had a gentle nature and was friendly and easygoing. It seems people have good things to say about her, King Jack said. Yes, Your Majesty, the minister replied. Not only is she pretty, but she is very humble. She talks to all rabbits in the kingdom, and she helps anyone in need of her aid. Hearing all this made King Jack's love for Nyla increase with each passing second. The image of her in the Great Hall still played repeatedly in his mind. He could see her pretty in fluffy white fur and big black eyes, which shone brightly like sparkling obsidian. There was a unique ring, spotted with white, around her eyes. She truly is the fairest in the kingdom, King Jack thought to himself. Is there any reason why you are asking, Your Highness? The minister asked. His question brought King Jack out of his daydream, and he replied with a smile, I saw her painting the Great Hall today, and I wondered who she was since I had never seen her before. Her father should have been the one to come, but he told her to come in his place. She helps him out by taking painting jobs from time to time. So, will she be here again tomorrow? King Jack asked excitedly. Yes, Your Majesty, the minister replied. That news was a delight to King Jack, and he asked if there was anything else he ought to know about Nyla. The minister told him that everyone loved her, and her presence had a soothing effect upon all who met her. Even rabbits that were known for their short tempers seemed to calm down in Nyla's presence. So, she is really a good match for me, King Jack mumbled. Can I do anything else for you, Your Highness? The minister asked. No, that is enough, King Jack replied. Thank you for answering my question. The rabbit bowed and left King Jack, who continued to think about the fairest rabbit in his kingdom. The next morning, King Jack was already waiting for Nyla when she walked into the hall to work. She was surprised to see him, and she asked why he was there. I wanted to watch you work, King Jack replied. But I'm just painting. I don't think that you would find it very amusing. Don't worry, King Jack told her. I enjoy watching you paint. Nyla gave a little smile, and that was the start of her relationship with King Jack. From that day forward, King Jack was there to welcome her every morning when she came to work. After she was done painting for the day, they would walk through the garden, play with each other, and jump around. They watched every sunset, enjoying the beauty of them. This continued for a while, even after Nyla was done painting the Great Hall. King Jack's feelings for her grew with every passing day. He wanted more than anything to tell her how he felt about her. He wasn't exactly sure how to go about proposing to her, so he just decided to tell her how he truly felt. They were strolling in the garden, heading back towards King Jack's palace after watching the sunset. He held her hand as he went on his knees. Then he said, "Nyla, you are the finest rabbit I have ever met. Every day that I spend with you, I become a better rabbit. Will you do me the honor of marrying me?" Jack asked nervously. His heart began to beat faster. He feared what her answer was going to be. His love for her was so great, but he wasn't sure if she felt the same. If she told him that she didn't feel the same way, King Jack wasn't sure how he would feel about it. He wanted to spend the rest of his life with her as the queen of his kingdom. He looked at Nyla, meeting her eyes, and when Nyla looked at him, her eyes filled with joy and delight. "So, what do you say, Nyla?" King Jack said. "Yes," Nyla replied with a smile. He laughed out loud and reached for the ring he had his craftsman make for her. The ring was made of wood with beautiful patterns etched into it. He had it custom made, for King Jack had wanted the ring that would match Nyla's beauty. He held it out to Nyla, who reached out her hand, indicating Jack should put it on her finger. "I love you, Nyla." King Jack was filled with joy. "I love you too, Jack." Nyla's eyes twinkled. The news that King Jack had proposed to Nyla, the fairest rabbit in all of Dwarf Hotot Kingdom, quickly spread. Everyone was happy to hear the news because they knew that Nyla was the best match for their wonderful king. That night was filled with laughter and happiness. Everyone in the Dwarf Hotot Kingdom celebrated, and King Jack announced that the wedding would be in a few days. Shouts of joy rippled through the kingdom. Nyla was surprised to see that the whole kingdom had come to see them. "I can't believe how quickly the news has spread," Nyla said. "Everyone is happy for us because they know you are the best queen I could ever ask for." Nyla gave a small smile and told King Jack that she was happy that he has chosen her to be his queen because she had fallen in love with him on the first day they had met. "You did?" King Jack asked in surprise. He was happy to hear that Nyla had loved him right from the onset, as it showed that they were indeed a match made in heaven. While the entire Dwarf Hotot Kingdom was celebrating over the news of the engagement between their King Jack and Nyla, the fairest rabbit in the Dwarf Hotot Kingdom, King Oliver flew into a rage when the news reached him in his palace. His squire had brought the news to him thinking he would be happy for his friend, King Jack, but the reverse was the case. King Oliver blew his top on hearing the news. That very same week he had planned to head over again to Dwarf Hotot Kingdom to tell Nyla she would become his queen. He had been confident that she wouldn't refuse him, and he would have finally added her to his collection. The fairest of them all ought to belong to no one else but him, King Oliver. How can this be possible? He asked in rage. How can King Jack of the Dwarf Hotot Kingdom marry the rabbit of my dreams? John, a Holland lop rabbit with a brown fur, was worried that King Oliver would act rash in anger. You have to calm down, my lord, he told the king. John served as the High General to the king, and the king held him in high regard. John was a healthy and robust rabbit who exercised daily. He also ate delicious hay and rabbit pellets that were of high quality to remain healthy. Unlike most other rabbits, John hardly ate any vegetables with high moisture content and fruits containing sugar. He also didn't even overeat carrots, as they were high sugar. John was respected in the kingdom and had won many competitions in the Holland lop Kingdom. His duty was to protect his king, as well as the entire kingdom. John would have gladly sacrificed his life for King Oliver and Holland lop should the need ever arise. He was always alert, and his fluffy ears never hung down. They would catch the faintest of sounds. Everyone respected John, and when he heard that the king was in a rage, he ran to his side. I can't calm down, John, King Oliver bellowed. You haven't met Nyla, have you? No, my lord. I haven't met her. She is the fairest rabbit I have ever seen, and I wanted to marry her. She would look good in my palace beside all my other priceless possessions. King Jack has double-crossed me, King Oliver yelled. He married her and turned all my plans to dust. John knew that for his king to be in a rage over a rabbit, it meant that she was exceptionally beautiful indeed, as King Oliver only desired the best. The idea that King Jack had gotten something he had hoped to obtain was blinding King Oliver with rage. What do you suggest we do, my lord? There was a pause as King Oliver considered John's question carefully. There wasn't much to be done at this moment, other than try to convince Nyla that she is better off with King Oliver than King Jack. War, King Oliver said. War? John asked, confused. There had never been a war between the kingdoms, and John wasn't entirely sure if that was what King Oliver was suggesting. We will go to war with the Dwarf Hotot rabbits. We will defeat them, and after that Nyla will be my bride, King Oliver declared with confidence. Going into the war wasn't something John liked the idea of, but he wasn't going to argue with his king. He turned to the squire and told him to summon the guards. When the guards arrived, King Oliver sat on the golden throne with John beside him. send a message throughout the kingdom. Let all the soldiers of Holland Kingdom gather and prepare for war against the Dwarf Hotot rabbits, John declared. We march tonight and attack by sunrise. The news came as a surprise to the guards, but they saluted John and marched out to summon the soldiers from their barracks. King Oliver and John led the march to the Dwarf Hotot Kingdom for the first time in the garden's history. In the Dwarf Hotot Kingdom, the Dwarf Hotot rabbits were still celebrating the news of their king's engagement to Nyla when they heard a rabbit army marching. King Jack was in his palace when news that King Oliver was attacking the kingdom reached him. King Oliver is doing what? King Jack asked, surprised. He is attacking the kingdom with his soldiers, a subject told King Jack. The confusion was apparent on King Jack's face. He couldn't understand why his friend, King Oliver of the Holland would attack him. The last time they had seen each other they had been on good terms, and nothing had seemed amiss. He had expected King Oliver to come and celebrate his engagement to Nyla with him, not to attack his kingdom. Order the soldiers of the kingdom to get ready, King Jack ordered. We march to face the Holland rabbits. King Jack was torn. He didn't want to go into war with the Holland rabbits. Both kingdoms had lived alongside each other in peace for a long time, and he wasn't eager to see that peace destroyed. The soldiers of the Dwarf Hotot Kingdom marched with King Jack commanding the army. When the news had reached him, King Jack didn't want to believe it, but now he could see that it was true. King Oliver of the Holland rabbits was attacking his kingdom with his army. The Holland rabbits had entered the Dwarf Hotot Kingdom, and King Oliver was heading towards King Jack's palace, where Nyla was. Soldiers, forward to the Dwarf Hotot palace, Oliver shouted. The Holland soldiers followed their king's instructions, charging forward. Soon, they arrived at the palace, barely making way for King Oliver and John who stood by his side. King Jack. King Oliver shouted as he walked into the great hall, which was looking more beautiful than it had been the last time he was here. If he hadn't been blinded by rage, King Oliver would have admired the walls, and he would have asked King Jack to let whoever painted them paint his palace too. There you are, King Oliver declared as he spotted King Jack in his palace. Today, I will destroy your kingdom and take Nyla to be my future wife. King Jack was waiting patiently at the end of the hall, watching King Oliver approach. He was calm, but he wanted to know why King Oliver had attacked his kingdom. Why would you want to destroy my kingdom and take away my fiancée? King Jack asked his friend who had turned into his enemy. Because you stole Nyla. She was meant to be my wife. I love her, and I would have paraded her around for everyone who came to my palace to see. This took King Jack by surprise. He didn't understand what King Oliver meant when he said he'd stole Nyla. "Please don't let him take me, Jack," Nyla wept as she held on tightly to King Jack. "I don't want to be away from you." Prying his eyes away from King Oliver, King Jack turned to his fiancée and said, "Don't worry, my love. I would fight to the death for you and our kingdom." He wiped away the tears that had formed on Nyla's face. He assured her that he would keep her safe. Their display of affection sent King Oliver into an even greater rage, and he called out to King Jack, demanding that he fight him. "Leave my kingdom, and I will forget this ever happened," King Jack said to King Oliver. "I won't leave unless Nyla follows me." There was no way King Jack was going to let Nyla, his future wife, follow King Oliver. He would fight for both his kingdom and his queen. King Oliver had already drawn his sword, and King Jack pulled his from his scabbard. "For my kingdom and my queen," he cried out as he charged at King Oliver. Both kings leapt into the fray, their swordsmanship on display. The news of the kings fighting spread throughout the entire kingdom, and soldiers from both kingdoms made their way towards the palace. Though they couldn't all enter the great hall, they cheered for their kings, calling out their names. As for King Jack and Oliver, they were barely aware that their soldiers had stopped fighting. They swung their swords at each other, evenly matched, judging by the way they fought. King Oliver was confident in his swordsmanship since he was born of 4 generations of royal descent. In his mind, that made him far superior to his opponent King Jack. King Jack, he wanted to protect his kingdom and his wife. He loved Nyla. He didn't want her to be paraded around like an object as King Oliver would do if he won the duel. Nyla would be just another part of his collections, another piece of capital for him to gloat about. That gave Jack the courage to face King Oliver's sword even if he was at a disadvantage. They fought on. Overconfident, King Oliver underestimated King Jack, who managed to find a lucky opening to take advantage of. King Oliver lost his balance, and King Jack began to press him harder and harder with each second. Soon, King Oliver lost his sword and staggered backwards, King Jack's sword hovering at his neck. "You have lost, King Oliver of the Holland Lop," King Jack declared. He removed his sword from his friend's neck. King Oliver was angry that he had lost to someone he believed was lesser to him. "I did not expect such behavior from you, King Oliver. We are not only neighbors but best friends," King Jack said with regret. "For the sake of our friendship, I'm willing to forgive you if you promise never to repeat your actions here today." Having lost, honor demanded that King Oliver accept his defeat, and he bowed his head in shame. He was ashamed that he had failed to defeat King Jack, but he wasn't repentant of his actions. He was further enraged that a mere Dwarf Hotot rabbit had defeated him, King Oliver, with the blood of 4 royal generations running through his veins. King Oliver nodded, as John helped him to his feet. He turned away from King Jack and headed towards his kingdom. Seeing their king suffer defeat, his subjects followed him, heads bowed in shame as they made their way back to their corner of the garden. As they exited the kingdom, the whole of Dwarf Hotot Kingdom rejoiced in celebration, for their king had defended them. King Jack had faced King Oliver, who wanted to steal away their beautiful queen-to-be and sent him back to his kingdom with his head bowed. On this peaceful night, may all beautiful dreams surround you, cradling you into a night of good sleep. Good night.